Hi everybody, this is SAAD for the SAAD Truth. I wasn't planning on releasing a SAAD Truth clip today, but as you all know, whenever I see lunacy around me, I am compelled to take action in any way that I can. Uh, because of that, I have my own troubles that are only getting exacerbated at my own institution, but nothing will silence me from the truth, from justice, from fighting back against horrifyingly bad ideas. In any case, today I wanted to mention the recent case of, let me just look here, the gentleman's name Richard Ned Lebeau, a professor of political theory at King's College, London. He was at some conference in an elevator with a bunch of folks, and when they were asking each person, which floor you want to get off on so that they can, press the button accordingly, he apparently mentioned a joke that is apparently an old joke. I don't quite understand it, but he said something like, get me off on the lingerie's floor or the ladies' lingerie floor. And a few people snickered, and there was a woman in the elevator who found that to be a very offensive, very sexist, very hostile. She was made to feel unsafe. As someone who apparently had suffered some sexual assault, she felt triggered and she filed a complaint. This is because he said, "I'll get off at the ladies' lingerie floor." And then he tried to reach out to her, saying, "Look, I'm with you. I abhor any exploitation of people and certainly of women, but let us not take away from the hard work of fighting for real victims. I find your complaint to be frivolous." And then because he said that, then that increased, the aggression on her, and then everybody doubled down and so on. Should he have made that joke? Perhaps not, because we know we live in an environment where any syllable that you say might be construed as something offensive, something violent, because don't forget that words are just as violent as someone hitting you over the head and dragging you into the cave. And so, yeah, he probably shouldn't have said it, given the current zeitgeist. He did say it. He tried to apologize, at least to her directly. That wasn't enough, and now apparently he's gotten himself into all sorts of trouble. That's literally for saying, when someone asked which floor you want to get off on, he said ladies' lingerie. This is a 76-year-old man who, not that it should matter what his record is. I mean, if you have a great academic record and you rob a bank, you still rob the bank. So I'm not using his academic reputation as a cover or as justification, but just to give you a sense, this is a man who has an H index of 45 and has close to 10,000 citations on Google Scholar. So apparently he's had a very illustrious career. He's a member of he's a fellow of the British Academy, so a prestigious appointment. He said the wrong joke consisting of two words, and now he is feathered and tarred. Now, this is part of a longer series of such cases, and here I jotted down some other guys. There is Sir Tim Hunt, who, let me just go back here. He's the gentleman who won the Nobel Prize in, I think, 2001. H index of 80, citation record 26,505. Now, again, I'm not using this as a cover. I'm not saying that if you're a prestigious scientist, you're allowed to act like an idiot. No. But what I'm saying is, you take this man's totality of accomplishments. This is what got him into trouble. So he was speaking at a conference, and as part of his prepared remarks, Sir Tim Hunt said, in reference to, he was supposed to speak at a meeting about women in science. He said, "Let me tell you about my trouble with girls. 3 things happen when they are in the lab. You fall in love with them, they fall in love with you, and when you criticize them, they cry." Okay, is that a great thing to say? Probably not. Does it seem like, certainly in an environment of political correctness, you want to stay away from such comments? Yes, I'm with you. but he's been feather and tarred. So all of his collective work. Now, this is not a guy who was going around assaulting women at conferences. He said, he comes from a certain era. I mean, I think he's in his maybe mid-70s now, where making these kinds of jokes would not be the end of your career. Perhaps in today's rarefied, sterile environment, you should never make such jokes. I get it. Should we destroy the man because of those comments? Should people respond? Maybe you roll your eyes and say, oh, that's kind of an obnoxious, sexist thing to say, and you move on. That's what healthy people do. No. He committed a grave sin. It was a verbal, violent assault, and he needs to be punished for it. Let's go on to another gentleman. This is Lazar Greenfield. A few years ago, this had been coined Seamangate. Let's look for him. He was the president-elect of the American College of Surgeons. He had developed something called the Greenfield filter, which is used in surgeries. He's a guy who apparently had helped many, many women have flourishing careers in medicine. So if anything, he was someone who certainly had worked hard to create, quote, gender parity in the field. But here's what he said. So he had penned an article on Valentine's Day where he was talking about mating behavior across several species. And at one point, when he's talking about a study that had been published in the Archives of Sexual Behavior, wherein the researchers had found that having contact with semen for human females had some benefits, he basically concludes his article, or at least includes the following in his article. So there's a deeper bond between men and women than Saint Valentine would have suspected, and now we know there's a better gift for that day than chocolates, meaning in reference to semen. This was viewed as unbearable. He had to be let go. He resigned as president-elect of the American College of Surgeons. And then the authors of the paper in question, whom, by the way, I know some of them. As a matter of fact, Stephen Platek is someone whom I know well. He invited me to appear in a podcast with him, which you could probably look for it. Steve Platek is an evolutionary cognitive neuroscientist. I won't read you their letter because they are the ones who had written the articles in Archives of Sexual Behavior demonstrating the beneficial effects of semen to women. And this is what Greenfield was referring to in his article, in his prepared comments. And so let me just very quickly read for you the ending paragraph from these guys. How can someone be asked to resign for citing a peer-reviewed paper? Dr. Greenfield was forced to resign based on politics, not evidence. His resignation is more a reflection of the feminist and anti-scientific attitudes of some self-righteous and indignant members of the American College of Surgeons. Science is based on evidence, not politics. In science, knowing is always preferable to not knowing. Signed, Stephen M. Platek, Becky Birch, who I also know, and Gordon Gallup, who's another prominent evolutionary psychologist. I've had the pleasure of interacting with, I think it's his son. In any case, these are very serious evolutionary scientists who published an article demonstrating that particular benefit, the benefits of semen or being exposed to semen on specific metrics in women's health. I think they were referring to some depression symptoms and so on. And this guy, Greenfield, refers to it, perhaps in a flippant manner, jokingly in reference to Valentine's Day, and he's out. All his life's work no longer counts in comparison to people having been offended by what amounts to him simply actually citing effectively published research, because he did so perhaps in a flippant way. People were not happy, so he was engaging in semen-based verbal violence. And then finally, the last guy that I'll talk about is Matt Taylor. Many of you know it as Shirtgate. This is the British astrophysicist who had been interviewed at one point wearing a shirt that had sort of women in scantily clad. And again, is this how I would dress if I'm going to be interviewed as a scientist? No. So yeah, the sartorial choice of this gentleman was less than perfect, less than desirable or advisable. Should he have been beaten up and run out of town in the way that he has been? No. Look, I've had a colleague, a female colleague, an older colleague who has now since retired, uh, say some very, very, frankly, obnoxious and offensive, if not hurtful. I didn't get hurt because I don't care. I'm not that soft. But she made very, very open comments about my weight at one point. Something to the effect, "Boy, you've really porked up there, boy." I mean, not using those words. Probably much more offensive than any of the examples stated here. I mean, in this case, she was specifically speaking to me. This wasn't just a general statement made as a commentary as part of a lecture. In interacting with me, she referred to my looks specifically in a denigrating manner and specifically about my weight. How did I respond? Well, I thought it was obnoxious. I thought it was rude. I thought it was impolite. I didn't pursue her. I didn't fight to get her fired. I never brought it up again with her. Not because, for no other reason than I realized that people sometimes act like assholes. And in this case, she was wrong to do it. It was unprofessional. But I certainly don't think that she deserved to be fired and I should file a complaint against her because she made, frankly, offensive comments to me. This is a fellow professor. So again, the question is not that we should condone or seek to justify inappropriate behavior. We should all strive to always be professional, always be courteous, always be kind. Sometimes people act like idiots. Sometimes they cross the line. And then let the, quote, punishment fit the transgression. If one of these famous scientists says something that is considered inappropriate, then deal with it in some reasonable manner. But now the environment is so dangerous. It is any comment that you make, any syllable that you utter might take 30, 40, 50 years worth of work and wash it down the drain because you said some off the cuff idiotic statement. Again, not justifying it, but when people interact, there are transgressions that happen, minor transgressions. That's part of life. Every day I'm offended in endless ways. I open up social media. The amount of insults that are thrown at me is simply unbelievable. Yet I persevere because I'm a healthy individual. Healthy individuals are able to navigate through the world and recognize that once in a while some other party might say something to them that is less than perfectly sterile. That's life. And if you can't handle that, then you don't belong in mixed society. You should be off in some gulag by yourself where no one can offend you. So there you have it, folks. This is unbelievable. I don't know what it's going to take to redress the ship. I can tell you that I know from many male professors who speak to me, they say they're terrified to ever even host a student in their office hours because they don't know whether the student in question might accuse them of anything. So they leave the door open. They take all sorts of precautions because they're unbearably terrified of any accusations, wrong accusations that might come their way. Is this what we want? Do we want now to have endless professors afraid to carry out their duties, their job, interact with students because they're afraid that anything they might say or might not say, anything that they do or might not do, might come back to haunt them? Again, there are bad agents out there. There are professors who sexually harass women, who use their power to exchange, for example, sexual favors for grades. Of course, these people should be punished. Of course, this is unacceptable. But let's restrict our ire, our indignation to people who deserve of that indignation. There you have it, folks. I wish you all a good weekend. Back to my own personal fights. Wish me luck. Cheers.